NFL Week 12, and we've already seen 4 games this round with Thanksgiving Day and Black Friday games now in the books. And that leaves 12 more games to focus on this weekend with no teams on bye. Now it took 11 weeks, but we're finally back in the positive here, going 3-0 last week in Week 11, which pushes these NFL parlay picks up to 11-9 on the season. Let's keep it going and jump into this week's picks. There's going to be 2 different parlays. This first parlay is going to start off with the Chiefs and the Raiders. The Chiefs will be hungry to get back to winning ways after they lost to the Eagles on Monday Night Football. Now, they just may have the perfect opponent to do so against this week, playing the Raiders. Kansas City won both games in this divisional matchup last year. They're 5-0 in the past 5 versus the Raiders as well. They're 10-1 in the past 11 and 15-2 in the past 17. This looks like a good spot to get another win. The Raiders are they're 5-6, but that's kind of propped up with recent wins over the Giants and the Jets. They fell back into the L column, though, last week against Miami, but they did at least keep that game close, only losing 20-13, even though they were nearly 2 touchdown underdogs. Patrick Mahomes, though, is 15-3 straight up after a loss, and I'm certainly not taking Aidan O'Connell. He of 3 touchdowns and 6 interceptions this season to be the one to reverse that trend. Let's kick this off with a Kansas City just straight up win. Next in this parlay, we're going to the Jaguars and the Texans. I think this looked like it could have a sneaky potential for some game of the week potential here. It's the second meeting of these teams this season, with Houston winning 37-17 in Jacksonville in Week 3. Now that improves Houston to 10-1 straight up versus Jacksonville in the past 11 meetings. Now that was just Stroud's third game of the season in his young career, as he was 20 of 30 for 280 yards and 2 touchdowns when these teams last met. Now, since then, he's vaulted himself into the clear favorites position for Rookie of the Year. In the last 3 games alone, all Texans wins. He has combined for 1,162 yards and 8 touchdowns. Houston is now 6-4, right behind Jacksonville, who are 7-3 for the division lead. Jacksonville had won 5 straight before getting smacked by San Francisco 34-3 after the bye, but they did rebound with a 34-13 win over Tennessee last week. Looking at scoring and defending here, Houston is 10th in points per game this season. They're scoring 23.8 points per game. Jacksonville is 11th, right behind them, scoring 23 points per game as well. Houston is giving up 20.8 points per game, 14th. Jacksonville is giving up 20.4, that's 11th. Now, both teams are also giving up a ton of yards this season. Jacksonville's 29th in yards per game allowed, and Houston is 25th. I think with Trevor Lawrence and C.J. Stroud, we should be able to see a game where both quarterbacks can throw the ball around, which should result in at least both teams getting at least 2 touchdowns. So let's go both teams over 1.5 touchdowns for this second leg of the parlay. And we'll round it out with the Bills and the Eagles. The Bills, they had lost 3 of 4, and they were on an 0-6 ATS run prior to last week's 32-6 rout of the Jets. Now, anyone who thinks a win over Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle suddenly makes things all right in Bills land might be a little crazy. There's talent in Buffalo, but their games are littered with mistakes, and that starts with Josh Allen, who is 2nd in the league in interceptions, only better than Sam Howell. Now, you probably don't want to give Philadelphia any extra possessions and chances to score, as they rank 6th in points per game at 27.3. Now, they just beat the champs, KC, 21-17 on Monday Night Football, and they do come in off of short rest, but they are now an NFL best 9-1 straight up, as well as an NFL best 6-2 ATS. Buffalo suffered several injuries last week. Each of Teron Williams, Dane Jackson, Cam Lewis, Taylor Rapp, and Micah Hyde were all dealing with injuries at some point this week, and all in the secondary. Surely they're not all going to miss out. I'm sure some will play, but that could open up some space for the Philly offense. Only once all season has Philly scored fewer than 20 points, and that was a 20-14 loss to the Jets. And even in that, they still got 2 touchdowns, which is how I'm going to bet this game. Philly to go over 1.5 touchdowns, so it's Philly over 1.5. Houston and Jacksonville over 1.5 each, and the Chiefs to win, which brings you right in around even money at -105 over at Bet365 to round out that first parlay this weekend. Now, before parlay 2, while you're listening, be sure to drop your picks for this weekend into the comments while you're listening, and hit that like button to help grow the channel if you're liking these picks. Parlay number 2, we're going Steelers and Bengals. I feel like I just saw a very similar matchup to this in last week's Steelers game in a divisional game. Pittsburgh is 8-2 to the under, while Cincinnati is an even 5-5. The Steelers are 28th in points per game, averaging just 16.6. And the Bengals, even with Joe Burrow, weren't much better, ranking 20th, averaging 20.2. Now on defense, Pittsburgh is still holding their own. They're 7th in points per game allowed. They give up just 19.5 points per game. And Cincinnati is lower, though, giving up at 21st, giving up 22.6. But can Kenny Pickett be the one to take advantage of this potential advantage against a slightly weaker Bengals defense? I don't think so. His highest passing yardage total in the past 4 weeks has been 160. He has 0 touchdown passes in his last 2 games and just 1 in his past 5. These were already 2 of the slower paced teams in the league, with Cincinnati 23rd in plays per game and Pittsburgh 29th in plays per game. Now, there's one wrinkle here in that Matt Canada, the offensive coordinator, did get fired for Pittsburgh, so potentially we will see Pittsburgh open up the playbook a little bit. It can't possibly be any less creative here, so maybe that changes, but it's going to need to change a lot to see Kenny Pickett start slugging the ball around and Pittsburgh putting up tons of points. It's doubtful that Jake Browning steps up into Joe Burrow's shoes after Burrow was injured and picks apart the Steelers secondary either. I think he'll also be playing it safe. Now, if we tease this total up to 50.5, all the way up from the mid-30s in the alternate total markets, that's a total that Steelers games, I'm going 50.5 under. Steelers games haven't passed that number at all this season. Cincinnati games have gone into the 50s 4 times, and actually twice in the past 2 games, but that was with Burrow. I can't see the same thing happening with Jake Browning. We're going alternate total under 50.5 here. I'm going to take the exact same approach with the Broncos and the Browns. Cleveland is 5-5 in totals betting, while Denver is 6-4 to the under. Both of these teams are about mid-pack offensively, with the Browns 13th, 22.7 points per game, and the Broncos 15th, 21.7 points per game. The Browns are 6th in defense, giving up just 18 points per game, while Denver's defense is among the worst, 30th, giving up 26.8. But in recent weeks, Denver has improved as they've only given up 20, 22, 9, 17, and 19 points. So a lot of the high point total in their rankings does come from earlier in the season when they were getting shredded. They should be able to contain Dorian Thompson-Robinson of the Browns, their backup quarterback, who will be playing this week. He only managed 165 yards on 43 pass attempts last week. His 0-4 touchdown interception ratio also won't strike fear into the Broncos defense. He'll also be making his first road start of his career. But then this Browns defense shouldn't be too worried with Russell Wilson either. Prior to last week versus the Vikings, Wilson had gone 5 games without throwing for over 200 yards. Denver has also been massively aided by turnovers in recent weeks. Minnesota had 3, Buffalo had 4, and Kansas City had 5 in their past 3 games, all being wins for Denver. Denver has a plus 10 turnover differential in those games, and something like that just simply cannot continue. However, Cleveland has given the ball away 20 times this season. That's tied for the 3rd most, so it is possible that luck does continue this week, but even if it does, Denver rarely makes an effort to move the ball down the field quickly. They're 31st in plays per game on the year. I think we should see another slow-paced game where neither team tries to make too many mistakes here. So if we take a similar approach, another game with the total lined in the mid-30s, take the alternate total all the way up to 50.5 for that extra insurance. That's a total that Browns games have only exceeded twice this season. Now for Denver, their games have reached into the 50s 4 times, but none in the past 5 weeks, where their games have averaged just 36.6 points per game. We'll go under 50.5 in this game. This parlay is going to have 4 legs, and we're into leg number 3 right now, and it's the Buccaneers and the Colts. Tampa Bay comes into Week 12 at 4-6, while Indy is 5-5. Neither team is really showing much reason to be excited about either of them, but they are both still technically alive to win their divisions, though it does look a little bit less likely for the Colts. Despite only having 4 wins, the Bucs, they are just 1 game back of the Saints for first in the NFC South. The Bucs are coming off a 27-14 loss in San Fran and outside of a 20-6 win over Will Levis. And the Titans, they have lost 5 of 6 games. Indy does have back-to-back wins, and they'll be fresher coming off of a bye, but a narrow 10-6 win over the Patriots in Germany and a 27-13 win over the 1-9 Panthers, which was helped by 2 pick sixes, even though Indy was outgained in that game. That doesn't exactly prove to be too impressive of a performance right there to get excited about. The Bucs have been covering. They have been a covering machine, though lately. They're 7-3 ATS this season, tied for the 2nd best mark in the league, and that includes being 5-2 ATS as an underdog. They're 4-0 ATS in their past 4 games as well. Straight up, Tampa Bay may just have only 4 wins on the year, but their 6 losses would come by 14, 14, and then 3, 6, and 2 points last week. And so those 2 double-digit losses have come against and another 13-point loss against San Francisco last week. So those double-digit losses this season, there have been 3 of them, have come against San Francisco, Detroit, and Philadelphia, which are all contending teams. Indy this week is not a contending team. And Indy, they had given up 20 or more points in each of their first 8 games prior to those last 2 games. I don't really think much separates these 2 teams, and I think if we add some points to Tampa Bay, who are already 2.5-point underdogs, and we bump them all the way up to plus 10.5 underdogs, whether you're using that in a teaser or an alternate spread, that should give us more than enough buffer to keep Tampa Bay in this game for our bet. The final leg, we'll go to another division rivalry here. It's Rams and Cardinals. The Cards are 1.5 underdogs right now. I'm going to be looking, and they'll be looking to reverse a trend that has seen them lose 12 of 14 games versus the Rams. That also includes a 26-9 loss in LA earlier this season. Now that is the only time the Rams have kept an opponent, though, to under 10 points this season. They've scored 10 or more in all but 1 game as well, only failing to do so in a 20-3 loss to Green Bay. But that did come with Brett Rippon at QB, not Matthew Stafford. Arizona has only been kept under 10 points twice, once in that game versus LA, and again versus Cleveland. They've allowed every opponent this season to score 16 or more points. Offensively, though, with Kyler Murray and James Conner back in the lineup in the last 2 weeks, they've won 25-23 and then lost 21-16 last week. I think in this game, we can at least see 10 points from both teams. That's what I will do for this parlay. We'll go Rams, Cardinals, both teams to score 10 or more points. So that's both teams to score 10 or more there, with Tampa plus 10.5, Cleveland and Denver under 50.5, Pittsburgh and Cincy under 50.5. That got me minus 141 odds over at Bet365. Certainly not going to make you rich, but it does look pretty safe. You should be alive for most of this game to cash that ticket. That's it. 7 games, 2 parlays. Those are my Week 12 picks. Let me know what your picks are in the comments. Are there any sort of alternative props you like to bet like I do with these alternative totals and scoring props? And if you like the info you've heard here, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. And good luck with all of your NFL picks this weekend.